So the next presentation will be delivered in English by Christina Efthymiadou and Roula Kitsiou. And the presentation is titled Migration Trajectories, Creating New Educational Realities, the Case of Greek Complementary Schools in the UK through Teacher Accounts. So, Christina and Roula, the floor is yours.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Όπως πολύ σωστά είπατε, θα γίνει παρουσίαση στα αγγλικά, κυρίως γιατί εγώ έτσι νιώθω λίγο πιο οικία με την αγγλική γλώσσα στην παρουσίαση. Αλλά ερωτήσεις και σχόλια, φυσικά όποιος θέλει να κάνει και στα ελληνικά είναι απόλυτα εντάξει. Today we are going to focus on the UK context, and specifically we are going to share with you some preliminary findings from research we have done along with Roula Kitsiou, my colleague from the University of Thessaly, on teacher agency within the context of Greek complementary schools in the UK. So, starting with the sociopolitical context and the Greek migration in the UK, over the past 15 years, Greece has experienced a significant brain drain as a large number of young, highly educated individuals emigrated due to the economic crisis and limited employment opportunities. According to Eurostat data, 500,000 Greeks left the country during the 2009 financial downturn in search of professional opportunities abroad, with a considerable proportion relocated to the United Kingdom. To mention some important numbers and data around this, according to Statista data, the number of Greek nationals residing in the UK rose from approximately 26,000 in 2008 to 73,000 in 2021, and the peak was recorded between 2016 and 2018, with 74,000 Greek nationals living in the UK. The advent of this group of Greek nationals had profound consequences for the running of the Greek complementary schools in the UK, which had to accommodate the children of the newly arrived Greek migrants. And having said that, we need to pay attention also to the different background of this newly arrived group of people in terms of their education level and also in terms of their expectations of the complementary schools in the UK compared to older migration groups in the country. Today we are going to focus on teacher agency in Greek complementary schools in the UK and the impact on the professional identity of the teachers. Complementary schools are, as we all know, you are quite familiar, of course, with that, community-based organizations that provide extracurricular classes for the maintenance and development of community and heritage languages. In the UK context, they have a complementing role to mainstream education, and children in complementary schools are mostly multilingual. So they have varying heritage language proficiencies and literacies. So this has an impact on the learning objectives for teachers in the sense that the learning objectives cannot be standardized, but need to be tailored to the specific students' abilities and needs. We would say that although there are some sources available for teachers, there is overall a limited learning, we would say, resource specifically for heritage language learners. So in this case, teachers have, in many cases, they have to develop their own learning resources and adapt their goals and lesson plans and teaching practices to the specific needs. So we are going to have a look at that over our findings. We will see that many teachers struggle with developing specific teaching resources for the different levels of Greek proficiency. Our theoretical background relates to agency. Agency is broadly considered as the socioculturally mediated capacity to act, and we understand agency in a dynamic way as an emergent phenomenon which is achieved by individuals through the interplay of personal capacities and the resources, affordances, and constraints of the environment by means of which individuals act. So this definition puts emphasis on both the capacity of the individual and the role of the context, situating agency as a complex and interrelated system of components. We would say that within this context, Agency is something that people do and not something that they have as a property, capacity, or competence. Specifically, when we come to the concept of teacher agency, which is increasingly conceptualized in different educational contexts and in teacher education, we see agency as an important dimension of teachers' professionalism and an aspect that shape the work conditions and the overall quality of education. And this has started to be acknowledged in curriculum policy in the UK specifically. We would say that the enhancement of teacher agency is the only sustainable way towards the maintenance of everything that is good in education and the improvement of that which needs improvement. We would say as well that teacher agency, following a dynamic view, is that something that teachers do and something that has an important impact on their professional identity, in the sense that the actions that they take feed back to the construction of their teacher identities. Talking about teacher identity, teacher agency, we follow the ecological model of teacher agency by Priestley and colleagues, proposed in 2015. In this framework, the achievement of agency is seen as a temporal and relational phenomenon that contains three dimensions: the iterational, projective, and practical evaluative dimensions. The first one, the iterational dimension, refers to the activation of accumulated patterns of thoughts and actions from the past, and these patterns are incorporated into practical activities, allowing for the stability and sustainability of identities and institutions. The projective dimension relates to the future aspirations, short-term and long-term, that allow the shaping of one's actions in line with one's possible future trajectories. And finally, the practical evaluative dimension has to do with actually the decisions that teachers take in their practice. So their capacity in the present situation to make conscious judgments among alternatives while engaging with cultural, structural, and material conditions, which could be perceived as enablers, constraints, or resources. So what is important here is that there are alternatives. So if there are no alternatives, we cannot really talk about teacher agency. There needs to be alternatives, and teachers need to be able to interpret the environment and then judge what would be the best possible alternative in their case. This is a figure taken, which represents the model of teacher agency, and we see how the three dimensions come together. We have the iterational and projective feeding into the practical evaluative dimension, and this comprises of the perception and interpretation of the context, and then this leads subsequently to the decision making and the actual behaviors of the teachers. Now, our research questions. We had two broad research questions relating to our project. The first one had to do with the changing environment of the complementary schools in the UK due to the advent of the newly arrived students from Greece. So the first research question is as follows: how did teachers experience the new education reality as shaped by the advent of newcoming students from Greece? And the second one, how was agency achieved by teachers in Greek complementary schools during that time? Our paper draws on data from a broader project titled Diaspora Voices, Teachers' Tales. We have started collecting data a few months ago, so this is very much a project in progress. At the moment, we are still analyzing parts of the data, and today we are going to present a preliminary overview, we would say, of the findings relating to the second research question about teacher agency. The primary objective of the project was to explore how UK-based Greek complementary school teachers navigated shifting educational realities brought on by increased Greek migration after 2012, with a focus on their professional identities, agency, and strategies for managing the linguistic and social diversity in their classrooms. We have employed a qualitative methodology. Our paper draws on semi-structured interviews and 2 focus groups with UK-based complementary school teachers who taught in 6 complementary schools outside the London area during the years that saw the highest rises of student population in the UK and in the Greek complementary schools, so specifically between 2012 and 2019. Teachers in our sample were all qualified, so this comes in contrast with some of the debates and discussions we had about the qualifications you mentioned about the American context, for example. This I have to say that this used to be mainly, we would say, the context in the UK, the same case. So in the past, we wouldn't have mainly qualified teachers because there was a lack of available teachers in the areas. But between 2012 and 2019, which is our period, our area of interest, we would say, we had qualified teachers who came to the UK in order to pursue postgraduate studies. And in that way, they were available and they decided to work as a part-time job during the weekends at the Greek schools. Some of them, I think all of them were paid because we have also some volunteering roles in the schools. So some of them, in order to gain experience, they decided to volunteer in the Greek schools. But in our case, all of these teachers in our sample were employed and paid. So they were all qualified. 8 out of 11 were Greek, while the rest 3 were Greek Cypriot. To address the first research question, data were analyzed following the principles of thematic analysis, following Brown and Clark's framework, and we identified some patterns, and we discussed this by both me and Roula. We went back multiple times. We checked again the data, we created codes, and then we ended up with specific themes that we would say summarize the main patterns around the experiences of Greek teachers. To address the second research question, which is the focus of today's presentation, subsequently data were analyzed rank on the ecological model of teacher agency as an analytical framework. So we are going to use that to present our findings today. Here, it's an overview of our participants' profile. Of course, these are not their real names, and we have included here the complementary schools area. So we see we have a mixture of schools in the broader Midlands area, both East and West Midlands, and in the Somerset area, including Bristol, but also some surrounding areas around Bristol. And then we have also the length of service. Some of them worked for from 2013, some of them a bit earlier, 2011, some a bit later. But we would say that all of them had experience during the period we are most interested in. And this is the time when the newly arrived migrants from Greece came to the UK after the Greek bailout. So the focus is on the second question: how was agency achieved by teachers in Greek complementary schools during that time? I will very briefly present an overview of our findings for the first one, because we thought that this is relevant in order to get a full sense of what follows. So very quickly, teachers experienced the new educational reality shaped by the advent of new coming students from Greece in both positive and negative ways. In a positive way, they suggested that the new coming students, with their high proficiency in Greek language, spurred healthy competition between students and improved the overall quality of the teaching, while the whole community was revived. And this was mainly due to the fact that the newcomers were more active in organizing events and interacting with one another, because they had the feeling of the needs of a feeling of belonging more heightened compared to the older ones. We had also parents who were more nostalgic of Greece, so this really gave them an extra reason to become invested and engaged with the community. And then we had certain challenges that teachers faced in terms of lack of material resources, and that had to do with the higher number of students without additional teaching staff and the inadequate space in existing schools and relevant teaching resources. Challenges in terms of lesson planning, and this relates to the different language proficiency levels in their classrooms. So this had an extra difficulty in terms of creating lesson plans that were relevant to the majority of students, and then issues of classroom management. So the need to attend to diverse needs simultaneously in class without additional support teachers led to some tensions among students with varied Greek language proficiency skills, which they had to be managed. Now focusing on teacher agency, the findings are organized along 3 dimensions. Regarding the iterational dimension, teachers in our sample were all qualified teachers, university educated. The vast majority had no teaching experience before joining the complementary schools. In some cases, this was their first teaching role, and quite frequently, it was a part-time job that took during their studies. At undergraduate or postgraduate level, the majority at postgraduate level. So most of them had completed their undergraduate studies in Greece and then moved to the UK to pursue a master's degree. And during that time, they worked in the Greek school. Some of them were also pursuing their PhDs. So in some cases, we had also teachers at a doctoral level. We would say that in terms of accumulated patterns of thoughts and actions from the past, these were mainly developed during their studies at the theoretical level, and personal experiences and values and beliefs in relation to schooling and the role of teachers, since this was their first, we would say, experience in terms of teaching. The data indicate a strong sense of professional responsibility among teachers towards the students. Participants reported extensive working hours, including work completed outside school time. Teachers consistently highlighted the centrality of positive teacher-student relationships and the importance of establishing a safe and caring learning environment as foundational to effective learning. And we would say that overall, despite the fact that they didn't have prior experience, they had a very clear commitment to supporting students and to maximizing their potential, reflecting a positive professional orientation towards learners. Teachers in our sample believed in the potential of every student and envisioned the Greek complementary schools as an inclusive space where students come to learn and enrich their linguistic repertoires. We have some representative quotes. So we have quotes regarding the beliefs about the teacher-student relationships. I'm not going to read everything loud, but I will just choose the ones that I consider to be the most representative ones. So I will focus on the first quote by Irene. I believe that the relationships you build with your students, if you take them with your side, then you can do many things. So I was always trying first to build a good relationship by getting to know the students, to learn things about their character, family, their interests, and then to focus on the teaching part. I personally believe that every student can achieve something, so it was like a personal goal for me to make my students want to be there. And this was a pattern that we found across our data a lot, we would say. Teachers expressed the idea that students had to attend the Greek complementary school on an extra day on Saturday morning in most of the cases, in some cases on Friday afternoons after school. So for them, somehow they had to persuade students and somehow take them by their side, win their trust and interest in order to want to be there. We also had beliefs about the purpose of schooling in general and perceptions of their professional capacity. Most of them, as I said, because they didn't have any prior experience, were not very confident about their skills, their teaching skills, but this led them to more preparation and studying before teaching. So many of them spent a lot of time preparing and also getting more familiar with different teaching practices. The projective dimension, most of our teachers aim to improve their teaching skills and attend to the ideal of the teacher they had in mind as someone who prioritizes student needs and attends to their feelings. The primary concern in our case, in our sample, was to develop a game-informed design for learning activities to encourage students to participate in the lesson despite the after-school or weekend time of the class, and to develop differentiated material that responded to the different abilities and competence levels so that everyone felt included in the class. This required, of course, from them to spend time to get to know their students and their personal interest, gather information about their family background, building relationships with parents, and spending a lot of extra time in preparing their lesson plans and teaching resources, adapting those to students' different levels and interests. Again, we have some representative quotes, and I would read aloud Tonia's quote here in terms of creating an inclusive environment. So the goal was for those who were stronger in Greek to continue and improve without falling behind, while at the same time making sure the others didn't feel discouraged, didn't feel that they couldn't cope, or that the class was not for them. So there needed to be a very good balance so that everyone could feel happy and satisfied in some way. I will also quote Katerina the difficulties in terms of setting goals for the whole class, especially in a specific class. I faced great challenges as I had 7 students in class and they were all of different age and different proficiency level. It was not easy to set goals for the whole class. You had to prepare 2 or 3 different lesson plans and 2 or 3 different set of activities in order to cover the learning gaps. And finally, we had the practical evaluative dimension. Teachers in our sample made conscious and constant judgments among alternatives during their teaching, related mainly to the use of languages, Greek and English, and to the differentiation and alternation of activities. The alternatives were guided by their values and goals to create an inclusive and supportive environment in their classes by attending to students' needs. And I know I'm conscious about the time, so I will go very quickly to the representative quotes. And I will choose Irene's quote here, which says that I should normally speak in Greek in class, but when I had, let's say, 10 students who only knew 10 Greek words, this was not possible. So I had to use both languages. This was a disadvantage for the student who had come from Greece and spoke Greek fluently and was able to read and write. So you had to differentiate. Anyway, it was extra work for me. The specific students could help other students in class as well. And we see also many differentiated teaching practices in terms of putting students in groups, creating pairs with students of mixed abilities. So some of them, the stronger ones, could help the less proficient ones. And as well, they had to manage tensions in classrooms. So sometimes there were comments from children who came from Greece and spoke Greek fluently towards students with limited proficiency levels. So comments were around the notion of, how is it possible that you don't know this? Or this is a very easy word. How come that you don't know that? So there were some tensions in the class that they had to be dealt with by the teachers. In terms of our main conclusion, we would say that the scarce resources and the new educational reality that teachers had to manage without relevant training or additional support had as a result the exercise of heightened teacher agency by their part. This related to decisions they had to make about their teaching practices, relating to setting goals, lesson planning, and preparing differentiated materials, as well as to classroom management, more specifically managing tensions arising between students with different backgrounds and linguistic repertoires. Teachers' actions were mainly shaped by their beliefs about the role of the teacher and the purpose of schooling, relationship between teachers and students, and perceptions of their own professional capacity, as well as their aspiration to encourage students to participate and create an inclusive environment. We would also say that the absence of strict curriculum prescription here, there is a specific curriculum in the UK. However, there are goals that can be spanned we would say, the different levels across 2 or 3 years. So this leaves some, we would say, freedom or flexibility to teachers to adapt their practices in order to achieve the goals over a certain period of 2 or 3 years' time. We would say that the teachers' practices turned the Greek complementary schools to breathing spaces for multilingual children and encouraged complex and creative use of a wide range of linguistic resources to communicate and to learn. And we would say also that in our case, teachers became more agentive, and this had an impact on professional and personal level. So they became more confident, they developed transferable skills and resilience, and they bonded with other teachers, creating long-lasting friendships. Agency in this context was an emergent phenomenon shaped by social conditions and scarce resources. I didn't have the time to go through that, but I'm sure that you are very familiar with this context as well, and the lack of available resources in terms of teaching material, but also in terms of space in the schools. And finally, teachers achieved agency as they had to constantly judge the conditions, consider alternatives, and choose the most appropriate course of action to achieve their short and long-term professional goals. And that's the end. I think I have overrun for a few minutes. Apologies about that. And thank you very much
Ευχαριστούμε
for your
πολύ,
attention.
Χριστίνα και Ρούλα. Και μπορούμε να έχουμε 5 λεπτά για συζήτηση, 6 λεπτά για συζήτηση, οπότε αν κάποιος θέλει να κάνει μια ερώτηση στα ελληνικά, and of course questions in English are welcome. Are there any questions? Ερωτήσεις? Αν δεν έχει ένα μικρό σχόλιο, εγώ θα ήθελα. Παρατήρηση περισσότερο. Ήταν πολύ ενδιαφέρον αυτό που είπες ότι οι καινούργοι, οι newcomers, πήγανε στα community schools και complementary schools, όπως τα λες εσύ. Αυτό είναι πάρα πολύ ενδιαφέρον, γιατί οι newcomers στην Αμερική ήταν εντελώς εκτός των κοινοτήτων, δεν συμμετείχαν καθόλου, δεν είχαν καμία σχέση κτλ. Και τα παιδιά δεν πήγαιναν καθόλου σε community schools. Αν κάνανε μαθήματα ενίσχυσης της ελληνομάθειας, ήταν συνήθως ηλεκτρονικά, online, με δασκάλους από την Ελλάδα. Οπότε ήταν εντελώς αποκομμένοι. Οπότε είναι πολύ ενδιαφέρον αυτό το παράδειγμα που έχουμε από την Μεγάλη Βρετανία.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ για αυτό το σχόλιο. Η αλήθεια είναι ότι και στην Αγγλία, ίσως δεν το έθεσα κι εγώ έτσι όπως θα έπρεπε, υπάρχει και αυτή η μερίδα των newcomers, οι οποίοι είναι ενάντια της κοινότητας γενικότερα και ίσως και του ρόλου της Εκκλησίας στο ρόλο των εκπαιδευτικών. Οπότε, απ' τη μια θέλουν τα παιδιά να είναι κοντά έτσι και να βελτιώσουν τα ελληνικά τους, αλλά δεν θα ήθελα να γίνει αυτό μέσω της σχέσης με την Εκκλησία. Συγγνώμη αν ακούγεται από μέσα, έχω ένα νεογέννητο και ακούγεται τώρα το κλάμα. Συγγνώμη.
Δεν ακούγεται τίποτα, μη στεναχωρείτε.
Εντάξει, την έχει αναλάβει ο μπαμπάς της για λίγο. Οπότε υπήρχε αυτή η μερίδα που δεν πηγαίνουν στο σχολείο και υπάρχει και από δικιά μου προσωπική εμπειρία, δεν το ανέφερα, αλλά έχω δουλέψει και εγώ ίδια, έτσι ξεκινήσαμε αυτή την έρευνα, γιατί έχω δουλέψει και ίδια σε 3-4 διαφορετικά σχολεία στην επικράτεια της Αγγλίας, παράλληλα με το διδακτορικό μου τα Σαββατοκύριακα, οπότε έτσι είχαμε ίσως και μια εύκολη πρόσβαση και διασυνδέσεις με διαφορετικές δασκάλες σε πολλά διαφορετικά σχολεία της Αγγλίας. Οπότε υπάρχει αυτή η μερίδα Ελλήνων και συνήθως επιλέγουν τα παιδιά τους να κάνουν ιδιαίτερα μαθήματα με δασκάλους στο σπίτι και έχω υπάρξει και εγώ δασκάλα σε τέτοια περίπτωση. Ωστόσο υπήρχε πολύ μεγάλη μερίδα, και αυτό είναι ενδιαφέρον, ανθρώπων που ήρθαν και δεν γνώριζαν ότι υπήρχε ελληνικό σχολείο και κοινότητα και φάνηκαν πολύ ευγνώμονες για την ύπαρξη της κοινότητας, κάτι που και εμάς μας προξένησε έτσι ενδιαφέρον, γιατί θα περιμέναμε ότι δεν θα το θέλανε. Παρ' όλα αυτά κάπως αναζωογόνησαν την κοινότητα, που στην Αγγλία τις περισσότερες φορές θα λέγαμε ότι διατηρούνταν μέσω των παλαιότερων γενιών Ελληνοκυπρίων, οι οποίοι είχαν και έτσι πρωταρχικό και πρωτεύοντα ρόλο στις κοινότητες ως πρόεδροι και υπεύθυνοι.
Να ρωτήσω κι εγώ κάτι, Ζωή. Έχουμε λίγο χρόνο.
Βεβαίως. Βεβαίως έχουμε.
Ναι, ευχαριστώ. Ναι, κάθε έρευνα στη διασπορά νομίζω ότι είναι πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα και η παρούσα πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα. Σε ένα θεωρητικό θέμα θα ανασταθώ. Στέκεται σε ένα πολύ ενδιαφέρον ζήτημα που είναι το agency, έτσι. Αλλά βλέπω ότι στην ανάλυση σας δεν έχετε τις διδακτικές αντιλήψεις των εκπαιδευτικών. Δηλαδή, τι ιδεολογίες διδακτικές έχουν, πώς συνδυάζεται το θεωρητικό σας μοντέλο, το agency δηλαδή, με teachers ideologies, με τις courses και τέτοιου είδους πράγματα, που είναι κρίσιμο ζήτημα. Δεν ξέρω, μου
Ναι, ναι,
διέφυγε.
ναι. Όχι, σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Είναι ένα κομμάτι το οποίο μελετάμε. Όπως είπα, δεν έχουμε τελειώσει με την ανάλυση δεδομένων μας. Τα language ideologies είναι ένα πολύ σημαντικό κομμάτι και είναι ένα από τα themes που έχουν βγει στο thematic analysis, αλλά ακόμα δεν το έχουμε βάλει σε αυτό το κομμάτι της ανάλυσης μας για το agency, αλλά όπως είπατε, είναι πολύ σημαντικό να μπει.
Ναι, δηλαδή χωρίς ιδεολογίες, θα έλεγα, αν το βλέπετε αυτό, χωρίς ιδεολογίες εκπαιδευτικών σε ζητήματα διδασκαλίας, πολύ δύσκολα να μιλήσεις για το agency, για το τι κάνουν, γιατί είναι το κυριότερο ζήτημα, θα έλεγα.
Είναι πίσω από αυτό.
Ναι.
Πολύ σωστά και ευχαριστούμε για την επισήμανση. Νομίζω ότι και η Ρούλα είναι εδώ. Πιστεύω ότι θα μπορέσουμε να το αναλύσουμε περισσότερο και να το συνδέσουμε περισσότερο με τα δικά τους teacher practices και τις αξίες και τα values.
Νομίζω ότι, αν μου επιτρέπετε να συμπληρώσω κι εγώ κάτι, ευχαριστούμε πολύ για αυτή την παρατήρηση. Νομίζω ότι για να καταφέρουμε πραγματικά να εμπλουτίσουμε αυτό το θεωρητικό μοντέλο, βάζοντας αυτή τη διάσταση, θα χρειαστεί να κάνουμε κάτι παραπάνω από θεματική ανάλυση. Θα χρειαστεί δηλαδή να κάνουμε ενδεχομένως και κριτική ανάλυση λόγου. Οπότε εμείς, που είναι το πρώτο ερώτημα που, όπως έδειξε η Χριστίνα, εντάξει, για λόγους χρόνου εδώ επιλέξαμε να ασχοληθούμε μόνο με ένα κομμάτι. Στο πρώτο ερώτημα, λοιπόν, έχουμε φτάσει μόνο μέχρι το επίπεδο της θεματικής ανάλυσης. Προχωρώντας, στόχος μας είναι να επιλέξουμε κάποια από αυτά και να πάμε σε βάθος κάνοντας κριτική ανάλυση λόγου πλέον και ίσως εκεί να έρθουμε και με κάτι πιο ενδιαφέρον και στο θεωρητικό μοντέλο του teacher agency πλέον. Αυτή είναι η πρόθεσή μας. Απλώς σήμερα επιλέξαμε να δείξουμε μόνο αυτό το κομμάτι γιατί μας φάνηκε πολύ πιο ενδιαφέρον και σχετικό με το...
Είναι ενδιαφέρον, απλώς το λέω ότι θα είχε,
Όχι, και έχετε δίκιο. Ναι,
Έχετε δίκιο.
Έχουμε ενδιαφέροντα δεδομένα ως προς αυτό και επίσης εγώ επειδή δεν έχω αυτή την εμπειρία και το έβλεπα από λίγο πιο έξω, οπότε έκανα άλλες παρατηρήσεις και ερωτήσεις, είχα άλλες παρατηρήσεις να κάνω όταν αναλύαμε τα δεδομένα. Μου έκανε φοβερή εντύπωση πώς διέφερε και η άποψη εκπαιδευτικών από αυτούς που στο δείγμα, από τους συμμετέχοντές μας, που είχαν και άλλο ρόλο στο σχολείο. Δηλαδή, η διευθύντρια, για παράδειγμα, κάπως ήταν πολύ πιο προστατευτική στο πώς θα εκθέσει τις ιδεολογίες της, σαν να προστάτευε τη φήμη του θεσμού. Ναι, του θεσμού συνολικότερα, δηλαδή το τι συμβόλιζε. Οπότε, με το που γιατί κάναμε και focus groups. Στα focus group παρατηρήσαμε πολύ πιο ενδιαφέρουσες εντάσεις ανάμεσα σε αυτά που έλεγαν σε σχέση με τις συνεντεύξεις. Τώρα δεν είχαμε τη δυνατότητα, να πούμε και αυτό, δείξαμε μόνο συνεντεύξεις τώρα. Αλλά στα focus group, εκεί φαίνονται πραγματικά οι ιδεολογίες και πώς το agency είναι όμως επόμενα στάδια της ανάλυσης μας και σας ευχαριστούμε για την παρατήρηση.